Today, I'm going to show you guys how to automate a weekly user report end-to-end on Bubble Lab. We're going to build the entire workflow live, from pulling production data from a Postgres database, running SQL queries on top of it, generating a Google spreadsheet with all of the information from different users, emailing users personalized insights and their metrics, and then scheduling this to run every single Saturday. If you're new here, hi, I'm Selena. I'm one of the founders building Bubble Lab, which is a workflow automation platform with full observability and exportability. This video is going to be on the longer side. There's going to be no cuts in the video, just speed up. So you can see the real process from start to finish, including all the errors and debugging along the way. Here are the timestamps of the video. Almost every product team wants to send personalized insights straight from their database, but it's actually really hard to set up that pipeline to run automatically, and I lived that pain firsthand. So before building Bubble Lab, my co-founder and I were actually building Jimmy, which was a nutrition tracking app that's still live today with over 2,000 users. We always wanted to send a weekly nutrition report to every user, but the traditional solution meant that we had to run SQL queries manually on top of our database, upload spreadsheets, syncing and paying for an email tool like Klaviyo, and it was honestly just too much of a hassle to set it up. But now that we have Bubble Lab, let's try doing it live today so I can show you how you can integrate workflows into a production app. And to make it fun, let's put 90 minutes on the clock and see if we can get this all set up and done from the very beginning. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. This is my Postgres database, and you can see that we're dealing with 2,055 users that are live in our app. So now let's just get everything set up. I'm gonna put a timer on the clock, and okay, great, clock is ticking. Let's go. So let's start a new flow and go straight into it. We will need to combine data from two different data tables on our Postgres database, one of which is user, which has all of our user information, and one is meal, which has every single meal and its corresponding information logged onto it. So let's go ahead and prompt Bubble Lab to help me look at my Postgres database, specifically the table meal and user. Then for a certain date, and it's past 7 days since I want this to be a weekly report, help me log onto a spreadsheet every user's daily intake. These should be columns in the spreadsheet, so name, email, date, total calories, total protein, total fat, total carbs. I'm also going to paste in the structure and the schema of each of my tables so that it knows how to actually generate the SQL commands accordingly. All right, now it is generating. So on Bubble Lab, what's great is that I don't have to worry about the configuration and connection to the Postgres database, and I don't need to worry about actually manually writing the SQL queries myself. Here is a flow that is generated, and obviously there's TypeScript code as well, so you can see exactly what's happening, and you can see that here is exactly where it's calling the SQL queries. That does the analysis that we asked for. So let's take the inputs that are required in this flow, which asks for date and spreadsheet ID. And let's just put today's date, and for the spreadsheet, I'm going to be creating a new spreadsheet and copying the spreadsheet ID, and this is where the flow will be putting in the information that we want to scrape for every single user. Now let's run, and well, we hit an error, and I don't want to sugarcoat any errors. We offer full observability, so this is something that you could try to debug and see in the code what went wrong, or you can also use Perl, our AI assistant, and just copy in the error that you're facing, and it will debug it for you. So let's do that. Let's update that and rerun, and we got past the input bubble this time, but looks like we hit another error in the sheet bubble, so once again, let's ask Perl to fix it. Because Perl has a context of our code base and how the bubble system is structured, it's able to fix changes and validate them and re-give you the code to replace the current workflow with. And let's update that and rerun, and okay, here we go. Did append the information in the spreadsheet, but I noticed that the total calories and the macros is definitely wrong because it's all 0, and now I realize that I never actually gave it the schema and the structure of the data column within the meal table. So right now it's just guessing on how to actually access the calories and the macros of each meal, but let's feed in that information from the schema into Perl and rerun it. I'm going to clear the spreadsheet and rerun, and here we go. Okay, so now we have every user and their daily nutritional intake pulled from my Postgres database and displayed nicely in a spreadsheet. Now on further thought, for a weekly report, I actually don't feel like we need to display the day-by-day metrics, but we just need a weekly average. So let's go ahead and go into Perl and tell it that and say that for every user, help me just make one row for each, and then change the columns from total calories, total macros, etc. into average. So that should be a pretty quick fix. And to verify, I'll just make a new spreadsheet just so that we can manually check that it's calculating the averages correctly. Okay, great. So I just reran it with a new spreadsheet, and here it is with the average numbers instead of the total numbers per day. And I'll just check it for my account average one, it says that I'm at 1,411 calories, and let's just manually filter for myself and calculate that in the total spreadsheet, and yep, the numbers match, so we are good to go. Now, I actually also want to grab every user's diet program so that we can calculate the percentage differences between their weekly averages and their goal and put that as part of the report. Let's prompt it for that, and once again, I'll give the corresponding information from my database. So let's instruct it to add 8 more columns, the goals of each of the 4 categories, and then also 4 more columns that calculates the percentage difference between the average and the goal for each category. And a little bit of debugging. Okay, great. So here is the new flow ran. Now it has way more columns with not only the weekly averages, but also the respective goals and the percentage difference for each category. Actually, let's also add another column that I forgot about, which is just total meals, just the amount of meals that they've logged per week. This should be a relatively quick fix. And the great thing about this back and forth is that we can just make little amends like this. Even in the future, if there are any changes to our table schema or new columns, we can just reprompt it again and readjust it based on our new structure. Okay, great. So now we also have total meals, and there is one more thing that I want to add. On Jimmy, every meal that is logged comes with a fun fact, and that's something that our users have really been enjoying. So I think it would be cool if we, in the report, can also just display one of their randomly chosen fun fact of the week. And the fun fact is in our data column for meals. So I will paste in an example of the data column just so it knows what it's looking for. Okay, so that just took a little bit of back and forth with Perl to debug how to actually extract the fun fact, but we finally got it. For every user, we have just chosen a random fun fact for them to display, and I think now we have all of the information necessary to actually generate this weekly report email. So now let's head into the next step of the workflow, which is actually sending the emails. As you can see, we can add complexity step by step while you're building the flow so that you can test it at every single step and make sure that everything is working. But let's prompt it to, for each user, I want to send them an email. It should be a weekly report with the date, and it should display the following information in a pretty HTML format. And since Jimmy has an orange color theme, let's also stick with that for the email. And I'm just going to list all the information that we want. For now, while we're still testing, I don't want to actually send these emails yet. So I'm going to say that since we're testing, let's send it to just my email with a random user. Perl is not perfect yet. If it does hit an error where it says that it completed but no code got generated, just tell it to please do it again, and it'll self-correct and give the code. Okay, great. That worked, and we were able to get a random user's report into my email. I think the format can be improved a little bit, so let's prompt it to do that. And also, I want to, at the end of the email, include links to our website and our social media. Okay, here is the newly generated report, and I think that looks pretty good, honestly. We're at 48 minutes now. I'm just gonna make some minor changes directly in the code this time, since I just want to name it to be coming from the Jimmy team and specify that it's Jimmy Weekly Nutrition Report. So with minor changes like this, it's definitely easier to just amend it directly in the code editor and not use an AI assistant prompting. I think now we can move beyond just the test email, and we would want to send it with the email for the respective user. In the future, in case I want to make any amends, I'm gonna also just add a field in the payload where if left empty, it'll send it for everyone, but if I put in an email, then I'll only send it to that user so that I can test it with my account. So let's do that real quick and test it with my email, and yep, it works. And this will not be a complete workflow if we don't schedule this to run every week, because I don't want to be coming back every single week to manually run this. So let's make it run every Sunday at 8 p.m. And currently in the flow, I'm also manually putting in the date. So let's tell it to just use today's date so that whenever it runs in a new week, it knows to calculate for the new date and the new week. Slight error with the resend bubble, just because now that we're sending to a bunch of people, it's not able to send 2 emails in a second, so we're just gonna have to add a delay in between each email send. And now let's add Cron back in. And there we go. Let's just enable that and we are good to go. And the email has now been scheduled and I won't have to worry about this in the future. It will just run automatically. Hope you guys enjoyed this example and you can build a very similar workflow for your database setup with the type of information that you want to send your users and schedule it in whatever way that you want. And if you're excited about building workflows like this with full observability and AI compatible, come build your workflow on app.bubblelab.ai. It is live and you can use it for free. Please let us know if you have any feedback and I will see you guys next time.